The table is set. The seats are nearly in place. The NFL regular season has come to a conclusion. And Bucks McGee, let's start this off. Saturday's show, you gave me a chance to lament my heartache a bit. So now, sir, I will return the favor. The floor is yours to stand in the spotlight a bit, as the case may be.
Four or 5 months ago, there were a lot of people who said, Buccaneers, maybe 6 wins, top five pick, just weren't going to be there, just horrible, not going to be great. And let's look, January 7th, 2024, your NFC South division champs back to back to back. So, for all of you haters, welcome to the party, my friend. It wasn't pretty, but like I said, as long as you're 1 point better, that's all that matters. We were 9 points better. So,
Is that going to be a
I,
rally? Is that going to be a rally cry into the playoffs? 1 point better.
that's my rally cry. 1 point better. That's all you've got to be. It wasn't pretty. There were ups, there were downs, but at the end of the season, you're NFC South Division champs. So it was an emotional day for me here at the artist household, at the McGee household. Um, there were beers flowing, there were tears flowing. Unbelievable. Our defense stepped up, handled business, and like I said, Baker wasn't at his best. I feel, the ribs hurt his ankle during the game, but at the end of the day, the defense did what it needed to do, and we secured our spot to the playoffs.
Now, you said 4 to 5 months ago, a lot of people were writing you off. I think people were writing this team off as short as 6 to 7 weeks ago because this has been a very up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So, how about like reflect on this season for a quick moment because we talked off air a little bit. This division title, it never really seemed lost, but it also never really seemed won at any point up until the final moment.
We started out 3-1, and it was like I was sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, 3-1! This is going to be insane." And then we lost like 5-6. It was all right. Well, this is what the team is. We've got to figure it out. And like we talked about, the run game was imperative. We had to be able to run the ball. And then December was key. We were able to run off, 4 or 5 wins. And at that point, the Saints were really rough. Everyone was ready to hand the Saints the division. But as you saw the Saints throughout the season, Derek Carr wasn't what you got. And you kind of bought a bag of bad goods. Let's be honest. Carr isn't what he is. Everyone thought Carr was going to take him to this next level, and didn't happen. The Bucks just continue to work hard and just chug along, and Baker does what Baker does. He's been a lot better than what was advertised. 28 tutties, 10 picks. You would have asked for if you knew that you were going to get that at the beginning of the season, you were like, all right, you would sign up for that. So at the end of the day, Bucks handled business. Up and down season. The defense was always consistent. And here we are, NFC South Division champs. Can't ask for anything more.
Let's talk about the game itself real quick because the Saints,
Ugly game.
yeah, because
Ugly game.
the Saints
Ugly.
the Saints did their part. They absolutely smacked the Falcons around, and it, like you said, ugly, 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 and it looked like a while. Like it just, I'm thinking aloud, like just put this away. The Panthers are awful. Just put this away. And early on in that game, there was that touch touchdown turn touchback because DJ Chark was over the plane but not out of bounds yet, so he lost the ball in the end zone. And then there was a field goal right before the end of the third quarter, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken. And they kind of rushed out there to get off the clock, and like there was the same amount of time on the game clock versus the play clock, so they could have just let it run out. and just kicked it in the fourth, they could have taken a timeout and
Hmm.
calmed down, not rushed out there. So in theory, at that point, Tampa's only up 6-0. If a couple little microbial things go a different way, you could have been down 10-6 at that point. So like even like the roller coaster of the season, the game itself was a roller coaster, and on top of the fact, you've got to deal with the Saints just tearing rear ends off Atlanta.
No, totally. But like you talked about that touchdown, yet again, Antoine Winfield should be starting and should have been voted into the Pro Bowl. Yet again, throughout this whole season, he has been the linchpin of that defense. And if he doesn't make that play with Chark in the end zone just before he hits, this game could have went totally different. But Antoine Winfield, best safety in the NFC. Don't care what anybody says. Can't tell me otherwise. He makes that play, and the Bucks are just able to survive, and their defense held strong. The problem with Carolina is they never tried to go deep. They
Yeah,
at all. I don't think they tried anything past 20 yards this whole game. And the Bucks just said, okay, if that's what you're going to do, we're just going to sit there, try to stop the run, and we'll see what happens. We knew Baker was, he was hurt. I don't think he was 100%. To all the credit in the world, Baker has been great this year. I love the guy. The guy just sits there, plays hard, and like I said, 1 point is all we need. 1 point better than the opponent. We were 9 better, 9-0. I will take it any day of the week.
yeah. Well, let's switch gears over to teams that were not any points better than the opponent. This final Sunday of the regular season, Tampa and one of their Florida counterparts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, are out. Obviously, you were hoping that that would not be the case to save us the grief of watching the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. But alas, Jacksonville completely bottoms out in Nashville. They lose to the Titans, and not only does this eliminate them, it does a litany of favors for all the other AFC teams. As we stated, it clinches a playoff spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers, clinches a playoff spot for the Buffalo Bills, and on top of that, clinches the division for the Houston Texans. So this Jag season now, this has to just be like a complete utter disappointment, especially the start they got off to, and it looked like that division was going to be sewn up before Thanksgiving.
No, and we talked about it in our our preseason show. We felt that the Jags were going to be that team. They were ready to be that team that took that next step up to be the elite team in the AFC, and they screwed the pooch. Let's be honest, they screwed the pooch, and I I don't get it. They should have been able to beat the Titans. I just don't get it. Derrick Henry, maybe his last hurrah in Tennessee, had a great game. You know, Ryan Tannehill, no one's heard from him all season. Looked solid. Like, let's be realistic. Looked solid. It's probably his last hurrah as well. So the Jags really need to sit there and figure out what to do. I don't get it. There's a ton of talent on that team. I don't understand how they could have underperformed like they did. But at the end of the day, you got to go out on the field and you got to play. And the Titans were ready to say, you know what? We're not in the playoffs, but we're going to ruin it for somebody. And the Jags were that team.
Yeah, and like it's funny how the Titans are set up. But I don't want to spend too much time on them because they're irrelevant this year. But Derrick Henry has this huge performance to make some potential suitor next year like want to give him a nice little contract to close out his career because he's still got some juice in the tank. And Tyjae Spears scores a couple touchdowns today as well, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's he scores a couple touchdowns for them as well. And now that looks like Tennessee now has a running back in the future.
Well, with Tennessee, here's the situation. I don't think Derrick Henry's back next year. Let's be honest. I think he's going to try. They're going to let him go. He's going to move on. He's going to try to sign on with a contender, try to get that ring. I think he deserves it. Mike Vrabel, does he stay? Like, let's be honest. Does he want to rebuild, or does he want to find a franchise where he's ready to take that next step? He did everything he could in Tennessee, but let's be honest, it is what it is. Ryan Tannehill is not the future. We all know Will Levis is the guy. So there's going to be turnover in that franchise. You know, it was a hell of a run for those guys. You know, they were able to, end Jacksonville's season, but I think you're going to see some things really change over there.
Yeah. How much do we see change in Jacksonville, or is this just a matter of let's just run it back and make sure we're healthy?
I don't know, but I'll tell you right now, Peters, Doug Peterson, he's on a hot seat. He's got to be. At this point, everyone was ready to take Jacksonville and move them up to that next tier. They really underperformed this year as a whole. So the question now is, can he get them back to the point where they can sit there and challenge? I don't even know, because the AFC is such a jumbled mess now. You don't even know who really is the elite.
Yeah.
But the point is they really need to be able to finish off the games they need to. And if not, then you may see after next year Doug move on and it'll be somebody else.
Real quick, a little off topic. We'll get off into them more in a second, but our buddy hopped on. He knows his Niners lost, but it didn't matter. Cheers.
Beer for breakfast, my friend. How are you today? Crazy. It's been a crazy day in the NFL. Good to see you. Thank you. You know, the Niners, let's be honest, they're the NFC's elite, and barring something insane, they probably are coming out. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, let's kick it over to the NFC. We'll stay in the NFC off of that, and we'll talk about this NFC East that we thought nobody wanted for the last several weeks of the season. The Cowboys get to the point where we're like, oh wow, here are the Cowboys. This is it. This is their ready to go. And then they have a couple miserable weeks strung together just to close it down on this high note. And they do manage to take this division not only because of their win, but because the Eagles also got utterly embarrassed by the New York Football Giants, down 24-0, not 24-0 at halftime, and this has now a very different tale of two tapes, so to speak, going into the postseason. The Cowboys will be the number 2 seed by virtue of their head-to-head tiebreaker over the Lions, who won on this finale weekend. And the Eagles now have to settle for the 5 seed, which of course means they head on the road to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, as the Cowboys and the Eagles now turn their attention towards the playoffs, who has potential matchup problems and can maybe be a little concerned that their shine might not be as shiny as they thought it once was.
I think the Eagles kind of just phoned it in. Like, let's be honest. Like, I really, in seeing that game and such, it's like they were like, all right, fine, we'll be the 5 seed. We're cool with that. It is what it is. The Eagles have been so up and down and I can't really figure them out. You would have thought that they really would have tried to win this game, but it was almost like they were content saying, we'll be the 5 seed. Let's just get the playoffs going and go from there. Cowboys, it's like they're trying to convince everybody that they are legit and they are ready to become the NFC elite and that they are America's team. I don't know if anybody truly believes in the Cowboys. Like, they have the talent, but I think everybody's waiting for the Cowboys just to screw the pooch. So I think when it comes to these two teams, I don't think the division really matters. I think it matters, seeding wise, but at the end of the day, I think Philly is kind of arrogant in the way they feel. Like, it doesn't matter where we fall. We're going to be great. We're going to be able to turn it on. But they've had issues, and I think they might be ripe for the picking. I really do. When it comes to the Cowboys, they just have to prove that they belong and they're legitimately back. And I don't know if they are yet. I'd like to think so, but For every great game the Cowboys have, they have that one or two games where you're like, yep, y'all done screwed up. So you're just the Cowboys of norm. So I think it's a situation where the Cowboys have a lot more to prove, and they are more willing to try to prove that. And the Eagles are almost content to be where they are, which very well could be their detriment.
So the Eagles, you said they kind of just mailed it in this one. If that's the case, they've been mailing it in for a few weeks now because that team has looked very flawed uh, over the last several weeks. And like on one hand, I don't know if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe they had a little bit of Kansas City Chiefs syndrome in them, and they just
That's
kind
what
of
I
like
think it exactly. That's
flipped
exactly
the
what it
switch
is.
off.
That's exactly what it is. It's that, oh, we feel we can click it on in any moment, but they haven't been able to.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody fears them.
And I don't think I think that the issues they have on the way their team has been playing of late, I think there's something there besides just a simple we can pump our chests out and we know when it's time to play because their
Mm-hmm.
running game has been very very inconsistent. Their
Mm-hmm.
passing game has grown to be inconsistent. AJ Brown had
Mm-hmm.
a extremely impressive year, but Devontae Smith was either complete boom, looked like an All Pro himself, or he wasn't, or he was barely registered on the field. They had really no third option, and and the tight end game. I mean, that's tight end was give and take too, as usual. I mean, they were
Mm-hmm.
really their offense was really only as good as Jalen Hurts could punch it in from the 1 yard line.
Yeah, that if you really look at the Eagles season, that's what it was. It was like the tush push. That's what it's been,
Yes.
Let's be honest. So now it's, do they have that vaunted offense that they had at the beginning of the season, where you were scared to play them because you were like, wow, they're going to run the ball, they're going to throw it around the yard, and it was like we're not going to be able to stop them. Now you look at the Eagles and it's like it just seems like there's internal issues. They just haven't been able to get it all together. They're ripe for the picking. They really are. I feel they are. Now, mind you, it might not be first round,
Right.
but it could be second round where they are ready to be picked off. So it's a situation where the Eagles really need to sit and say, what do we need to fix to go the distance? Because right now, looking at things, the Niners are the class of the NFC, and everybody else is kind of like, all right, they're there. And unless the Niners really mess up, screw the pooch, they should come out of the NFC.
And to that point, if the Detroit and the Cowboys can take care of business, the Eagles as the 5 seed, should they survive past Tampa, they'd be playing those Niners. And we all remember what happened the last time this season that the Eagles played the Niners.
Exactly, So, and it's a situation of, do you honestly think the Eagles are going to be better and be able to, flip the script and return the favor? As of right now, no. I don't think the Eagles are. The Eagles, to me, are could lose in the first round or whatever, and just be a footnote. Like
Yeah,
they're not. There's no confidence in that team. They've got issues, and it could be internal that they really need to figure out.
yeah, one heck of a Super Bowl hangover. And you didn't even leave with the trophy.
And it's going to be, if the Eagles, it's going to be tough going to Tampa. You're playing Baker Bay. Come on now.
Oh, so the Cowboys' first round opponent, this seems to be the Packers, which obviously sets up a two teams with histories of lore. The Packers were able to take care of business against the Bears at home. Maybe a little bit of comeuppance for having their playoff aspirations whistle away last year against an eliminated Detroit Lions squad. So they will now play the Packers because the Rams were able to pull off the victory against the Niners.
Mm-hmm.
And Cowboys against Packers, you would think on paper this would be a relatively easier matchup for the Packers because the Packers don't run the ball very consistently. Their Jordan Love is for the for like someone who threw over 30 touchdowns this season, he was so up and down, up and down. You didn't know what Jordan Love you were going to get. So you would think this would be a fairly favorable matchup for Dallas.
It would be, but does anybody truly believe in Dallas? That's the question.
Not until I
Regu- regular season is one thing, but now we're talking the playoffs. And if you're looking at Dallas, in their history, it's one and done in after the divisional set. So Dallas has the talent. It's just whether they can get it done. They should be able to beat Green Bay. Like I would. You're sitting there asking me today, I'm picking them over Green Bay. But if it's a situation where they come out to a slow start and Dak just doesn't have it, and just Green Bay is just for some reason firing in all cylinders, then it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's Dallas controls what they're going to do. They have the talent. It's just whether they show up to play or not.
Yeah, and it's just I was like kind of like playing in my mind like how things would play out, which matchup they would do, but like this one definitely would be one probably the Fox choice for a playoff game because Fox loves Cowboys games, and of course the Packers are typically a big draw as well. So
Right.
this is definitely a matchup, even if the flow of the game and the score wind up being something that's over by halftime. It's certainly something that's going to draw the eyeballs in, and we know the league likes that.
Exactly. So it's you look at the teams and you're like, all right, the Cowboys should be able to handle business, but do you trust the Cowboys until they tell you, unless they show you otherwise? You kind of sit there and say, all right, I'll take the Cowboys, but there's an asterisk next to it. You're like, you got to prove to me. If it's close after halftime, then at that point you're like, you just let it go and see what happens. But
Oh, so much for
yeah,
that.
yeah, you're like, yeah, I assumed Dallas was going to handle business, and Dak is thrown for 2 picks, and they've returned one for a pick six or something like that. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and thinking that they would be able to handle business against Green
Yes. Jair Alexander, beware. Um,
Bay.
so the
True.
other the other side of this wild card fallout, of course, is the Rams, who by virtue of their win hang on to the 6th seed, which means they will play the Detroit Lions. And how poetic justice of that, the Jared Goff Matthew Stafford rematch.
The script can't be written any better. I'm telling you, man. For all of us who sit there and say, the script is legitimate and the NFL is rigging this kind of stuff, it's just funny to see it. Um, I don't know. This is entertaining. I common sense would sit there and tell you to say, okay, I'm taking Detroit. Detroit is the better team. But if you really look at it,
Rams are one of the hottest teams in the league.
it's really a flip of the coin. The Rams can score points. The defense is decent. It's not great, but they can hold. And if you look at Detroit, the secondary's always been an issue. They can score points. So if you're telling me this is going to be a 35, 31 point, affair, and I have to flip a coin to see who's going to be the 35 points, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. Like, I don't know. I can't pick one.
Yeah. Match. So, what is kind of would be more of the telling scenario in this? The Lions very run heavy, Goff pick apart whatever's left, versus a Rams defense that's kind of been rebuilt throughout the course of the season, or this explosive youth infused Rams offense led by the steady veteran hand going up against a Detroit defense that's been very stout up front but a little bit questionable in the back end.
I think I think it's
more?
the Rams secondary. I mean, it's the Lions secondary. If the Lions secondary can hold up, then the Lions can win this game. But I don't know if they can. That's been the problem the last couple of years. The Rams secondary has been extremely bad. So the situation is do the Lions have enough to hold Puka and the boys? Like, like the Rams have become like this almost feel good story. Puka, you know, and these guys, no one gave the Rams a chance, and here they are. They match up quite well offensively. It's just which defense is going to be able to hold serve. And I don't know if the Lions are 100% when it comes to their secondary, if they can do it. I don't know. Like I said, it's a coin. It's a coin toss.
Shout out to the men down under. Short and stout beer reviews. Thank you for hopping on. And
Short stout, what's going on, my friend? How
and
we doing?
I, ironically enough, his team was the lowly the scraps of the Lions this week.
We thought the astronaut was going to carry him. Like, we talked throughout the season, once they had signed the astronaut, we thought that was going to be, the Vikings were going to be that team. So, the offseason, it's a situation of just trying to figure out who your quarterback is going to be, whether it's going to be Kurt or not. But, you guys have talent on that team. So the future is good for Vikings fans. I wouldn't, totally feel like it's a lost cause. You just got to figure out who your quarterback's going to be.
That's right. Now we'll switch over because it got a little bit dicey at the top of the AFC to close out these games, and Chargers took a lead late on Kansas City, so we think like, okay, maybe Kansas City's gonna be locked into 3, and tonight's and the tonight's Dolphins Bills game is going to be just strictly for the division and the 6th seed. But
yeah, I was hoping it was going to be for a little more. As you guys heard from the other show, I was hoping it was going to be for a little bit more, but both teams are in the playoffs now. It's just whoever gets the division.
Yeah. So Kansas City pulls this off. They're currently sitting in the 2-hole, barring the outcome of this game tonight. So which one now? There's you kind of got to ask yourself really what's more at stake. And I know we touched on it in one of the previous shows this weekend already, but if the Bills win the division, they'll be 2 because they beat Kansas City, so they will play the Steelers. Yes, Bills will play the Steelers, and then Kansas City will play the Dolphins again. So, or Miami handles business as they've been holding on to that 2 seed the entire time. And Miami then would wind up playing Pittsburgh, which not really a rivalry, but I guess they kind of have a little fun back and forth. And then Kansas City then would get the Bills, and of course that would be a first round matchup that has been a very popular matchup in recent playoff years.
True.
So talking about like how the script should be written, you would think Miami would win this game tonight, so the league would have Josh Allen and Mahomes in the first round.
Which I think they're hoping for. Let's be honest, they're hoping for that. If you're asking me, it would have been a lot more. This would have been Buffalo trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. This would have been a win, and they're in. A loss, and they're gone. For this whole season, I've basically called Buffalo fraudulent. I'm still not a fan of them. So at the end of the day, they're in now, so it's just seeding, like you said. I think at this point, now that Miami knows what they're going up against, it's going to be a situation where they're going to play. I think they still want the division. I think you got to play for the division. You want that.
You need the home game, and
yeah,
especially if there's any kind of remote chance that you think you may not be 100%. You're like realistic about what your team situation is. You need that home game if you can get one in the first round.
Yeah, I think you want the home game regardless. Like I don't believe these teams that are like, it doesn't matter where we are. we didn't, we'll play blah blah blah. No, if you have a chance at a home game, you want that home game. Let's be realistic. So I'm looking at this as you're probably going to see this as depending on what happens after, the midway through the third quarter, it is what it is. If one of these teams is really, up by two tutties or something like that, the other team may say, you know what, let's just pull it back. It is what it is. We got to keep people healthy. Let's think long term. I got to give Buffalo their credit. Like I said, I've called them fraudulent throughout the whole season. I haven't believed in them. This is impressive. I still don't think they're gonna make much. I don't think they're gonna win the AFC, but I give them credit. But I do think after this season, wherever they end playoff wise, you're going to see this team drastically change in how they're built. Miami, you're gonna see them. It's great that they can put up a ton of points, a ton of yards, but defensively they've got to be able to put up stops, and they're gonna need to do that in the playoffs. So I think this game is kind of like, all right, let's just see how it falls. I don't think both teams are like they want to win, but they're willing to say, okay, we know we're in the playoffs. Let's just figure it out and then just keep everybody healthy and then go from there Monday.
Whose gaping hole is more of a concern? The Buffalo's kind of play up to or down to competition, and they're very inconsistent in turnovers all over the place, or Miami's situation where outside of the Dallas game they just don't perform well against their direct peers.
If this was a couple weeks ago, I would say Buffalo, but I'm going to be honest. I've got to say Miami, and the reason is they can put points up. It's just this defense. I don't know. There's something about this defense that I just don't like. Buffalo has really hung their hat on their defense. Their defense has carried them through this gauntlet at the end of the season where, they've had to win these games. And if the offense hasn't been right, the defense has been there. I trust Buffalo's defense more than Miami right now, Miami's defense. So Miami really needs to show that, hey, we can really handle things. If our offense isn't hitting on all cylinders, then our defense can carry us. Right now, Buffalo's defense can do that. I don't know if Miami's can.
Well, and speaking of Miami's offense, this vaunted number one offense in the league, this team lately has been kind of questionable there because Waddle, it may be a question mark for the playoffs. Tyreek Hill has been very banged up in recent weeks. Achane has not been the same since he came back from his injury. So it's really just Mostert and not a whole lot else that Tua can rely upon. So as much as I would love to see Buffalo get smacked in the teeth tonight and taken down to some lower depths that they really deserve based on the season they've had as a whole, not of late, obviously. As much as I would love to see that, I don't have really a ton of confidence that actually will play out tonight.
No, and that's a problem. Miami, unfortunately, caught injuries at the wrong time. Any team will tell you that if you're going to hit injury bug or anything like that, you want it at the beginning of the season so that everybody gets healthy and then you get that playoff push. So now Miami, it's a situation of what is the offense? Tyreek, is the passing offense. Waddle is great and all, but Tyreek makes that passing offense go. Your run game, if those guys are healthy, yeah, that helps, but those guys have been banged up as well. So I think tonight you really need to look and see how things go, and you got to play it safe. If you got to let Buffalo win, then you got to let them win because you're thinking long term. You're thinking, playoffs and where you're going to be. Because right now, the AFC, I don't want to say it's wide open, but it's not what we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season. Not at all.
Yeah. Let's look at the playoff matchups as we know them right now, and we'll do AFC first since you're, of course, an NFC guy, at least currently an NFC guy after your identities changed.
That's right, and I'm better off for it.
So in the AFC, which matchups, as a football fan, are you most excited for? Baltimore obviously is not going to be playing next weekend because of the bye. So you've got currently, obviously, barring the outcome of tonight's game, Miami versus Pittsburgh, Kansas City versus Buffalo, and Houston versus Cleveland.
Oh, Kansas City and Buffalo, because I can't stand either one of those teams. I really can't. You know, I think the right because let's be honest, we thought Kansas City and Buffalo were going to be that was going to be the conference championship. We thought that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, pre-order.
Can't exactly? It was almost automatic because Kansas City has always played at home forever, and now we're sitting here going, okay, well, man, now they got to go on the road a little bit. So Kansas City Buffalo, to me, is quite interesting to see. You know, you got Mahomes and his wide receiver drops crew right there who can't catch a 10-yard pass for anything. And then you got Buffalo.
There, it's Tony.
And then you got Buffalo, and you don't know if Josh Allen is going to fumble, throw an interception. So it's that game to me is interesting because you would think, in theory, the winner of that game would be the team that would play for the AFC Championship against Baltimore. You would think.
Yeah. Now, does your does your anticipation for the AFC playoffs change? Should we do the little flip flop, and then we'd have Buffalo versus Pittsburgh, Kansas City versus Miami, and Houston, Cleveland.
Ooh. Ooh. Now, Kansas City versus Miami is entertaining as well. Mm-hmm. I think if you're talking optics and Tyreek, is playing his former team, of course, that adds some juice to it. Not gonna lie, that also kind of gives it some oomph. I wouldn't mind seeing that either. Whoever Pittsburgh plays, I really don't care because, like I said, I was rooting for the Jags like nobody's business today. I'm going to be honest because I'm tired of and we've talked about this. Pittsburgh, I think, is overly hyped, and it's that whole Tomlin fiasco. So, if I'd like to see Kansas City and Buffalo. I think that would be fun. But if you're telling me I'm getting Kansas City and Miami, I think it's just as good.
Yeah. It's just going to be sad if Tyreek's not 100% because obviously his homecoming was in Germany, so this would be his real homecoming, and if he's not 100%, it's obviously not a great homecoming.
Exactly.
Let's switch it over to the NFC matchups, and you'll have to put your fanhood to the side for momentarily and answer just as a football fan. Which matchups are you looking forward to? Obviously, we're not going to see San Francisco next weekend due to their bye. So we've got Dallas and the Packers. We've got the Lions and the Rams. And we've got Tampa and Philly in a conference where actually everything is all squared away right now. We don't have to have anything waiting on tonight.
I'm going to say Lions and the Rams. I kind of like the whole Matthew Stafford, situation, coming from the Lions and such, and they're two high-powered offenses. Let's be honest. I think these teams mirror each other quite well. So Matt Stafford, playing against his former team, Jared Goff trying to solidify himself as a legit starter in the league, which he has. But come playoff time, this is going to be something interesting, and the Rams young guns, Puka and the boys versus, St. Brown, Laporta and these guys. Laporta, great tight end. So I think the Lions-Rams, I think, is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, and actually that's a good segue because I didn't think we were going to have time to discuss, but we can touch on awards for a little bit. So why don't we start with Offensive Rookie of the Year on that note? because obviously, and we did touch on this a little bit at that last night, um, with C.J. Stroud, obviously with the division title now looks to like a more considerable favorite. However, Sam Laporta's been a more consistent option throughout the season. Puka Nacua just broke all the rookie records as a receiver, and of course Zay Flowers was a significant contributor to the Baltimore offense that really grew to become a a unit to be feared this season. So, what do you think about a offensive rookie of the year?
We all know that the quarterback runs the award shows. Let's be honest. So, in all honesty, it's probably gonna be, and deservingly so. It's gonna be C.J. Stroud. Let's be honest. But if I had to pick a secondary, I'm going Puka. I think he has been a revelation for that Rams offense. I think he's going to be the guy long term. It's kind of like Cooper Cup, and then, all right, Cooper Cup's going to be the man, of course, for the Rams. But then you've got Puka who's going to take the mantle and move on, no doubt. But I've got to go CJ Stroud. I think he's been great, especially with the narrative in regards to the Ohio State quarterbacks. So,
yes. um, let's go with Coach of the Year because I think D'Amico Ryan's probably locked it up, being the fact that he won the division. But let's play devil's advocate because you have Kevin Stefanski, who really had this. He had to deal with the Deshaun Watson situation, which was an utter disaster. In and out of the lineup, didn't know he was going to play at that 1 week where he decided he wasn't going to play 5 minutes before the game.
Mm-hmm.
and,
yeah.
And then on top, then he had to switch over to PJ Walker, who's a journeyman. He had to switch over to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who played quite well for a rookie, but obviously still left a lot to be desired. And then Joe Flacco has been a little bit of an enlightenment for that team, but at the same time, Joe Flacco was ice cold coming off his mother's couch.
Excuse.
Sorry.
No, I totally get it. You've got to give the way that the Browns were able to bring Flacco in and continue on. It was great. But at the end of the day, I've got to go D'Amico Ryans. Regardless of how you win the division, you win the division, and they did what they had to do, and the Jags didn't. So here you go.
And
Texans are division winners. But he really was able to get these guys going, and I think that team really is going to blossom and be something special as the years go on.
And on top of the fact, winning that division from a team that was just supposed to be in the doldrums.
Yeah, exactly. People for the most part thought the Texans were probably 2 or 3 years away. For them to be able to do what they did, grind it out, and to win the division, regardless of how they won it. So you got to give them credit. And no, Ryans, coming from the 49ers, bringing that culture in, you got to give them props.
And the only other dark horse candidate I want to throw in the mix as at least as a finalist would be Sean McVay, because this Rams team was abysmal.
Oh no, totally. And I give Sean McVay a lot of credit for being, they had found diamonds in the rough with these draft picks, and these guys performed right off the bat. So I give them credit. There's no doubt about it. But there's something about Houston where you're like, you know what? D'Amico Ryans is the guy. You got to give him credit. You got to give him the award, and you could almost flip a coin between the two, but I would give it to D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah. Now MVP, I think, is a bit of just a formality at this point. I don't think there's any chance that Mark Jackson's going to lose it. However, I will say if there was anyone else that also deserved it, it would probably be McCaffrey.
No doubt. But I think Lamar at this point, he solidified it. I think, we all know the MVP is a quarterback award. It's just one of those things, because at some point, at one point earlier in the season, we thought, it was going to be Tyreek. He was on that, he was on that way to 2,000 yards, and there was all the hubbub, and then he got injured. But at the end of the day, it's Lamar played well enough to the turning point was the Niners loss to Baltimore, because everyone was ready to give it to Purdy, and then after that game, it just basically became Lamar's award to lose. So Lamar, I think, is going to end up pulling that out.
And the fact that Lamar was very inconsistent early in the season, all the injuries, and he kind of held them together. That and a defense which was very much island of misfit toys, but Lamar being the linchpin to keep them, in the mix a lot of the time.
Oh, definitely. Lamar held that team together. No, Lamar played great this year. You got to give him credit. And if someone, if they told us today Lamar was the MVP, I'd have no problem with it.
Yeah. Now, offensive player of the year tends to be like the other MVP candidate. I would think they go over 20 touchdowns and a 2,000 yard from scrimmage season would lock it up for McCaffrey. But I think the other candidate that needs to be mentioned is CeeDee Lamb, the first Dallas receiver of all the great Dallas receivers there have been, the first one to have 120 catches, and he had 1,700 yards, double-digit touchdowns, and very much took a lot of the shine away from Tyreek Hill, who is a contender as well. But Tyreek Hill, based on the way his season ended with the injuries, probably is taking a back seat to either McCaffrey or CeeDee Lamb.
Honestly, I think it's McCaffrey's award to lose. It just seems like throughout the year, everyone loved McCaffrey. It's just he's been consistent. He can do it, running, catching. Just he's a complete back. So, not take anything away from CeeDee Lamb, at all. But I think it's McCaffrey's award to lose.
And of course, the other one is Defensive Player of the Year, and that's I think it's been assumed for a good chunk of the season that it would be T.J. Watt's award because he kept him by himself really with the issues that offense had. Has kept the Steelers in playoff contention up to the point where now they are in the dance. But I just want to rip off some other candidates because we both love Aiden Hutchinson of the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
9.5 sacks, 11 passes defense. 11 tackles for loss, 7 passes defense, a pick, and 3 forced fumbles. The other Josh Allen.
The other Josh Allen.
61 tackles, 16.5 sacks, 16 tackles for a loss. One, obviously not too big a factor in the passing game. 1 pass defense, one pick, and 2 forced fumbles. And then, of course, C.J. Watt with his 68 tackles, league leading 19 sacks, 16 tackles for a loss, 8 passes defense, 1 pick, and 4 forced fumbles. So if you can think of defensive players to give T.J. Watt a run for his money and maybe steal it in the event that this injury kind of takes a little bit of shine off, despite the fact that he had an amazing game before he left this Baltimore game by injury, who would be the contender to kind of make T.J. Watt sweat a little bit for this award?
You could make a case for either of those guys, but I don't think there's anybody that's going to make them sweat. Even with the injury, I think everyone sees T.J. Watt as the reason that the Steelers defense was decent this year. Let's be honest. That Steeler defense was T.J. Watt. So I don't think there's anybody who can take it away from him. I think it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. He's the guy. To give him all the credit, I will. He's, put up 19 sacks, incredible. To be able to do what he does, and they've put 2-3 guys on him, and he still performs how he does is incredible. He's made that Steeler defense, formidable for the most part. So if I had to pick one, I would say Allen. But the problem is Allen from the Jags. But the problem is the Jags are out now.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, I think people look at, okay, well, he's great and all, but did their team make the playoffs? And I think that's why Watt will take this award.
So you think no surprises, no surprise with the award, no point to watch. Lamar, D'Amico Ryans, McCaffrey Offensive Player of the Year, C.J. Stroud Offensive Rookie of the Year. Lock it all up. Take the easy money.
Oh, and Baker Mayfield for
Come
comeback
back.
player of the year, comeback player of the year. Put some respect on my man's name,
Baker Bay.
Baker Bay, comeback player of the year. Booyaka.
All right, Bucks McGee. Well, the season's officially in the books, barring the outcome of this game tonight. I guess we can't be totally jumping up in joy because the Bills are in it one way or the other. But I'll give you the floor to close the show and reflect on the 2023 regular season.
Wow, it's really funny. We started out preseason, training camp out at Carolina Panthers training camp, and here we are, the end of the year. Tampa handles business, wins the division, beating Carolina. It's been a crazy season. Now we're getting prepped for the playoffs. Kind of hurts a little bit because you get to this point of the season and you're like, I wish there were more games, but now it's one and done. But that's what the playoffs are about. It's been an honor and a privilege, sir, with the nutmeg. So we're going to see what the playoffs are going to bring. I'm sure it's going to be exciting, sir. Can't wait for the playoffs to start.